Picture this. In the heart of a bustling city, where everyone is rushing, competing, performing, there's one man walking slowly, no phone in hand, no Bluetooth call, no stress on his face. He's dressed plainly. He doesn't look rich, he doesn't look poor. He just looks free. Around him, the crowd is frantic, checking stocks, rushing to meetings, flaunting outfits, chasing likes. But he walks as if he's not part of this race, because he isn't. He's not hustling, he's not selling himself, he's not trying to get ahead. And that's exactly what makes him dangerous. He's not plugged into the machine the rest of us are. He doesn't measure his worth in money, followers, or job titles. He doesn't care if you think he's successful. He's not interested in climbing a ladder that leads nowhere. He lives by his own rhythm, guided by his own values. And in a world engineered to keep you dependent, that is rebellion. You see, in a society where everyone chases money like it's oxygen, the man who doesn't run becomes a threat. Not because he harms anyone, but because his existence poses a terrifying question. What if freedom isn't found in what you can buy, but in what you no longer need? What if success isn't about accumulation, but about liberation? What if the entire game is rigged and he simply walked off the board? The system can't process that question. Because that man, the one who stopped chasing money, isn't playing anymore. He's outgrown the game. And nothing terrifies the system more than someone who doesn't want what it's selling. Let me tell you something most are too afraid to admit. This society isn't just built on money. It's built on your need for money, on your fear of not having it, your fear of being poor, of being left behind, of being judged. Every major industry you touch, from education to advertising, from social media to tech, isn't just selling you products, it's selling you a story. That your life is only valuable if it's profitable. That if you're not hustling, you're lazy. That if you don't want more, you're unambitious. That comfort is weakness and burnout is a badge of honor. Think about it. From a young age, you're taught that success equals earning, that your time only matters if someone else is paying for it, that rest is guilt, that play is childish unless it's monetized. Even schools no longer teach curiosity. They teach compliance. They train you to chase credentials so you can chase a paycheck. And then they hand you over to corporations that promise purpose, but deliver debt, deadlines, and dependence. Here's the brutal truth. If you don't crave money, you're a bad consumer. If you're content, you're bad for business. If you're self-sufficient, you're a glitch in the matrix, and society hates glitches. So it labels you lazy, irresponsible, unrealistic, broke. But those words aren't truth. They're control. Weapons to keep you running in circles, always chasing the next thing, always feeling like you're not a no. And if what I have is lost, then who am I? The system doesn't want you to ask that question, but you must. Because until you do, you're not living. You're just earning. And there's a world of difference between those two. Eric Fromm once said, "Real wealth is not having more, but needing less." But he went even further. The truly rich man is not the one who has much, but the one no longer controlled by the fear of not having. Let that sink in. Most people don't chase money because they love it. They chase it because they're terrified of what life looks like without it. The judgment, the failure, the irrelevance. But what if the man who feels no fear of being broke, because he knows who he is with or without a bank account, is actually the richest man in the room? Henry David Thoreau understood this long before the world became a 24/7 marketplace. He walked away from the noise, the rat race, the expectations. He built a cabin in the woods near Walden Pond, not to escape life, but to discover it. People called him poor, but he wasn't. He had enough food, enough shelter, enough time to think, write, walk, be. What he truly possessed was something most millionaires can't buy: freedom. Thoreau wasn't trying to beat the system, he simply stepped outside of it. And from that place, he saw clearly. The more you need, the more you can be owned. The less you need, the less you can be bought. Fromm echoed that truth decades later. He warned that modern man had become a slave, not to chains, but to consumption. We no longer ask, "Who am I?" We only ask, "What do I have?" We don't seek meaning. We seek upgrades. Our identity is tied to what's in our wallet, not what's in our soul. But here's the radical idea. If you no longer fear poverty, you can no longer be bribed. You can't be lured with shiny distractions or silenced by the threat of scarcity. The person who doesn't fear being poor is the person who's finally free to choose. Let's take it deeper. What really lives inside the mind of someone who isn't controlled by money? Who doesn't wake up every day climbing another rung on the financial ladder, trying to prove their worth through a paycheck? Here's what I've learned. They're not living to consume. They're living to feel, to be present, to create, to savor. Their joy doesn't come from purchases. It comes from moments, from conversations, from silence, from a walk in nature, a book read slowly, a meal cooked with care. These are the riches that can't be taxed, can't be marketed, can't be stolen. They don't need to wear their value. They are their value. They don't chase status symbols to prove they matter. They don't need to. They know who they are, and that's enough. They don't fear being seen as less than because they've stopped playing that game altogether. Theirs is not a life of owning. It's a life of being. And here's the beautiful part. They've reclaimed something we all had as children. When your happiness no longer depends on the market, the algorithm, or the paycheck, you become something the modern world can't comprehend. A person who cannot be manipulated, bought, or broken. So how do you actually live this way? How do you break the grip of money, status, and endless wanting? Thoreau gave us the blueprint nearly 2 centuries ago, and it's never been more relevant. He believed that freedom doesn't come from acquiring more, but from needing less. Every item you own, every service you depend on, every luxury you cling to comes with a string attached. And the more strings you collect, the more tangled you become. Thoreau didn't just speak these truths, he lived them. He moved to Walden not to escape the world, but to understand it from a distance. He built his own cabin with his own hands. He grew his own food. He lived with the bare essentials. And in doing so, he discovered a profound truth. When you reduce your needs, you increase your freedom. It's not poverty, it's power. It's not deprivation, it's clarity. See, when you stop chasing the bigger house, the flashier car, the fancier wardrobe, you unlock something far more valuable than money: your time, your energy, your mind. You're no longer shackled to jobs you hate, just to sustain a lifestyle you don't even love. You can say no without fear. You can walk away without regret. Because you've stripped life down to what actually matters, and you've found that it's more than enough. Thoreau once wrote, "A man is rich in proportion to the number of things which he can afford to let alone." Let that line live inside you. Because the fewer things you must have, the fewer ways the world can control you. Minimalism isn't about owning nothing. It's about no longer being owned. When you live with just what you need, everything you have begins to mean more. And the space you create, that's where your real life begins. Now let's take this even deeper. Thoreau showed us how to live with less, but Fromm showed us why it matters. He warned that modern society has hypnotized us into believing to have is to be, that your car defines your status, that your salary defines your intelligence, that your possessions define your worth. We've built a culture where you don't even exist unless someone else sees it, likes it, shares it, validates it. But Fromm flipped the script. He said, true fulfillment doesn't come from having. It comes from being. Being present, being alive, being free, being connected to yourself in a way that can't be sold, liked, or monetized. He called it the mode of being versus the mode of having. And that difference is everything. Because when you live in the mode of having, you always need more. You're always afraid of losing what you've got. You become possessive, anxious, insecure. Your self-worth rises and falls with your paycheck, your image, your external success. But when you live in the mode of being, they don't need the world to feel powerful. They need to know themselves. That's where their real wealth lies. So the question is this: are you living to accumulate, or are you living to become? Are you measuring your life by what you possess, or by who you are when all the noise is stripped away? Fromm's truth is simple, but it shakes the foundation of consumer culture. The person who chooses being over having is no longer a slave, and in today's world, that makes them truly dangerous. Let's be clear, money itself isn't the enemy, It's a tool, nothing more. It can build, it can support, it can feed, it can shelter. But somewhere along the way, we stopped using money and started serving it. We made it the master, the measure, the meaning. And that's where the danger begins. Because the moment your freedom depends on your finances, it's no longer freedom. It's a transaction. Think about how many people trade away their time, their energy, their health, even their values, just for a paycheck. Not because they want to, but because they feel they have to. They silence themselves in meetings to keep their jobs. They stay in toxic careers for the illusion of security. They say yes, even when their soul screams no, just to keep the money flowing. That's not wealth. That's quiet desperation. But here's the paradox. The moment you stop fearing the loss of money is the moment you become free to speak truth, to live with integrity, to choose what's right, not just what's convenient. When you no longer panic over shrinking bank accounts, you start asking bigger questions. Does this align with who I really am? Am I building a life I respect or just paying to survive? The system wants you to believe that money is freedom, but it's not. Detachment from money is freedom. Mastery over your desires is freedom. The power to walk away, to say no, to live on your own terms, that is real wealth. It's not about rejecting money. It's about refusing to be ruled by it. So what does it actually look like to live without chasing money? What makes someone truly independent, grounded, and immune to manipulation? After reflecting on the wisdom of thinkers like Thoreau and Fromm, and after observing how modern society keeps us endlessly striving, I've come to believe there are four key principles, four inner strengths that set a person free, not just financially, but mentally, emotionally, and spiritually. The first is freedom from artificial desire. We live in a culture engineered to make you feel like you're always lacking something. Every ad, every social media trend, every status symbol, they all whisper the same lie. You're not enough until you buy more. But the person who stops and questions that voice is already halfway free. They don't chase trends, they don't live in comparison. They ask quiet, powerful questions like, do I really want this? Or have I just been told I should? That kind of awareness breaks the cycle of endless, you no longer need approval to feel right. When you know what you stand for, the pressure to conform loses its power. Third is the ability to nourish yourself emotionally. In a world where so many rely on likes, on attention, on endless distractions to feel okay, the person who can sit alone with their thoughts, enjoy their own company, and feel at peace without external input, that person holds a superpower. Their joy doesn't come from possessions, it comes from reflection, from creativity, from being fully alive in the moment. And that kind of inner strength, it can't be bought, it can't be borrowed, it must be built. And the fourth is something most people never dare to practice: social courage. The courage to walk your own path, even when others don't understand, to say no to what's expected, to let go of approval, to risk being called weird, lazy, unrealistic, because you've chosen honesty over performance. That kind of courage shakes people. It makes them uncomfortable because it reminds them of their own compromises. But it also inspires, because deep down, people respect those who dare to be real. These four principles, freedom from false desire, value independence, emotional self-reliance, social courage, they form the foundation of a life that cannot be bought, owned, or controlled. And in a system built to sell you a version of happiness that always stays just out of reach, that kind of freedom is revolutionary. Let's not sugarcoat it. Choosing not to chase money will cost you. Not in the way most people fear, not in hunger, not in poverty, but in perception. Society will misunderstand you. People will label you. They'll call you lazy, unmotivated, even a failure. Not because you are, but because you make them question everything they've been taught to value. You'll see it in their eyes when you say you've chosen a simpler life, when you turn down a promotion that doesn't align with your soul, when you walk away from a high-paying job because it costs too much, your time, your health, your peace. They won't get it, and that's okay. Because what you're gaining is something they can't see, something they probably wouldn't believe. You gain time, not just free hours, but time that feels yours. You gain space to think, to breathe, to reconnect with what matters. You gain clarity, the kind that only comes when you're no longer sedated by distraction or chasing approval. And above all, you gain something money cannot buy and no status can guarantee. Freedom. Freedom to live with integrity. Freedom to create without pressure. Freedom to speak truthfully, to move slowly, to wake up and not feel like you're already behind. That kind of freedom is rare. And because it's rare, it's misunderstood. People may drift away, some friendships may fade, even family might worry you've lost your ambition. But what they don't see is, you haven't given up on life. You've finally started living it, on your terms. And that's the treasure at the end of the road less traveled. Now let's talk about why this choice, this refusal to play the game, makes people so uncomfortable, why it threatens the very structure of modern life. Because when you step out of the money chase, you don't just change your own life, you disrupt the system. First, the economic system. Modern economies thrive on endless consumption. You're expected to keep buying, upgrading, wanting. A person who's content, who doesn't need the newest phone, the latest fashion, or the fanciest vacation, is a problem. You don't feed the machine, you don't fuel the cycle, and that makes you economically useless in the eyes of those who profit from your insecurity. Second, the political system. Most political narratives are built on fear. Fear of scarcity, fear of the other, fear of losing what you have. But a person who isn't scared of losing money, status, or approval is far harder to manipulate. You can't be baited with promises. You can't be threatened into silence. You think for yourself. You vote with clarity. You resist emotional blackmail. And that kind of independence terrifies those who rely on mass control. Third, the psychological impact. Your peace becomes a mirror, and people hate what it reflects. Your contentment highlights their restlessness. Your freedom exposes their chains. You're not judging them, but they feel judged just by your existence. And so they push back. They call you strange. They try to pull you back in. Because if your way of life is valid, then maybe theirs isn't. And that's a truth too heavy for most to hold. In the end, society doesn't fear the poor. It fears the independent. It fears the person who doesn't want what everyone else is chasing, the one who doesn't need to prove anything, the one who walks through the world not looking to take, but simply to be. And that kind of person is the rarest and most dangerous kind of all. So how do you become that person? The one who isn't chasing money, who isn't consumed by fear, who lives on their own terms. Fromm and Thoreau didn't just point out the problem, they modeled a way out. And no, it doesn't require escaping to the woods or rejecting all comfort. It begins with something far more subtle and far more powerful. You start by simplifying. Not just your home, but your mind. You begin to strip away the noise, the clutter, the compulsions. Look at your spending, not just as a financial strategy, but as a spiritual audit. What are you buying that you don't actually need? What desires have been planted in you by advertising, not by your own soul? Then go deeper. Define your non-negotiables. What values are worth more to you than any paycheck? Maybe it's honesty, time with your family, your health, your creativity. Whatever it is, name it. Write it down. Make it sacred. Because once you know it's not a side project, it's the main mission. And slowly, intentionally, you begin to reduce your dependence on money. That doesn't mean being reckless or irresponsible. It means becoming resourceful. It means learning to need less. To build your life not around your income, but around your priorities. That shift, small at first, begins to change everything. You start to trust yourself more than the market. You begin to live with money, not for it. This isn't a one-time decision. It's a daily practice, a slow but steady rebellion, a quiet revolution, a choice to be ruled by purpose, not by price. And every time you act from that place, you become a little more whole, a little more awake, and yes, a little more dangerous to a system that wants you asleep. In the end, the man who doesn't chase money is not poor. He's powerful. He's not lacking drive. He's just chosen a different direction. He's not behind. He's simply walking a road most people are too afraid to take. He lives by his own compass. He works for meaning, not just for wages. He values time more than titles, depth more than display. And because of that, he can't be bribed with status, bought with comfort, or silenced by fear. He doesn't need the system's approval because he's found his own. Yes, people will misunderstand him. They'll call him unambitious, unrealistic, even dangerous. And in a way, they're right. He is dangerous. Dangerous to a culture that runs on insecurity. Dangerous to a world that profits from your discontent. Dangerous to anyone who needs you to stay small, scared, and obedient. But make no mistake, this isn't a story of rejection. It's a story of reclamation. Of taking back your soul from a marketplace that tried to sell it. Of remembering that freedom was never meant to be earned through exhaustion or debt, but lived. Lived honestly, lived simply, lived fully. Because the world doesn't need more millionaires with no peace. It doesn't need more influencers chasing applause. It doesn't need more productivity. It needs more presence. What the world needs now more than ever is men and women who are complete without consumption, who don't just survive the system, but transcend it. So ask yourself, what part of your life has a price tag, and what part never should have? And more importantly, who could you become if money no longer owned your choices? That's the question that changes everything. Because in a world where almost everyone is for sale, the man who isn't becomes the rarest and most necessary kind of human being.